From another perspective, it is the wealth recorded by all nations over thousands of years. The ultimate representation is the treasury in the temple. And then we have to ask a question. What is this money used for? How do we use it? We spend our whole lives gathering wealth. Don't deny it, we are all money hoarders, not just mortgage slaves, as mortgage slaves are just a part of being money hoarders. So then, let's think about what we use the wealth we've accumulated over a lifetime for. The wealth in the treasury, or the wealth we accumulate, generally has three directions, or goals, all of which are reflected in the Bible. The first is for consumption. What proportion of the wealth we accumulate over a lifetime is actually used for consumption? How much of a big house or how extravagant a feast can be considered part of consumption? So the Bible first addresses the wealth purely used for consumption, allocates it proportionally, standardizing it, meaning the treasury in the temple, tells us that a portion of the wealth is meant for offerings. I say this offering is a broad concept, which corresponds to consumption. A portion of the wealth we accumulate is meant to be taken by God. Such an arrangement for people all over the world is a new principle. It's difficult, indeed very difficult, especially for the Chinese nation, which I just mentioned as the followers of the God of wealth. It's even more difficult. This is not to blame the Chinese people because their teachings encourage extravagance. The offerings of the disciples. The first use of the wealth we accumulate in our storehouses is consumption. The second use is flaunting wealth. This also has parallel information in the Bible. King Hezekiah faced the envoys from Babylon. He showed them everything in his storehouses, all the gold, silver, treasures, and splendor. You can continue to study this further. For centuries, the Chinese understanding of happiness is not just about having money, but also about others knowing that I have money, which is showing off. My happiness lies in others seeing that I am happier than they are. Without this, our happiness is incomplete. And in this regard, the Sisi family is the ancestor of this behavior. Of course, the final result of this kind of arrogant showing off is that everything in the storehouses that was flaunted was taken away by the Babylonians. The third purpose of accumulating wealth in the storehouses is for security. Whether it's a large country with disaster victims or our personal life experiences, we know about our aging, death, and the harsh living environment of this rogue state with no free health care. If we don't accumulate a certain amount of wealth, our future has no security at all, and that's true. So don't get offended. Blame the people of Xi's country. We define Xi Jinping and the Xi Communist Party as a rogue state. This is the simplest fact. A country that boasts of being the world's second largest economic entity. To this day, no matter how much money it has thrown around in Africa, cannot solve the problem of free health care. For any ordinary Chinese family, if you get a serious illness, that's it. Lose everything. Recently, there are some TV dramas that I think are quite good. You'll find that those thieves and murderers have a common motive, which is that someone in their family got a chronic illness. that they couldn't afford to treat. What to do with medical expenses in the millions? Crime. At this point, there is parallel information in the Bible as well, where more of the Judah network would take the money from the warehouse, especially the east gate of the temple. You can go to my garden to see that east gate. This east gate is made of gold, but mine is not. Oh. He scraped the gold off the top of the gate and gave it to a foreign king. One of the kings told the Assyrian king, "You are my father." Literally, "You are my father. I give you all this money. Protect me." We use money to bribe evildoers, bribe doctors, bribe royalty, and bribe bureaucrats. We even bribe immigration officers, hoping that in the most desperate situations, these sinners will open a new path for us. The warehouse, the Jerusalem in our hearts, the warehouse in our hearts, serves these three main purposes: consumption, flaunting wealth, and security. But our lives tell us that these three paths have never brought us true peace. The Bible prompts us to rethink the role of the warehouse in our lives. Its true role. How do we correctly use the warehouse? First, how do we balance the ratio between consumption and construction? Second, is the happiness derived from flaunting wealth a trap set by Satan? Third, why does every family in our nation have a warehouse? Yet to this day, we cannot establish a free healthcare system. Even the transparency of officials' assets remains a distant concept for us. Anyone who dares to demand this is imprisoned by Xi Jinping. Don't blame others for calling us the sick man of Asia. Look at all the so-called civilized countries in the world. They have already established this basic level of civilization. And we are very, very far from it. Not only that, aren't we like the Babylonians from the East? For a full 40 years, Westerners have been flaunting their warehouses to us, right? During the Deng Xiaoping era, we were drooling. Oh, it seemed like everyone who sided with Russia and the Soviet Union ended up poor. Everyone who sided with the Americans became wealthy. So we need to reform and open up, bringing it back to the principles in the Bible. What does this mean? It means that the Westerners showed us how wealthy they are, right? There's nothing else to it. That's what reform and opening up is about. So what do? We spent 40 years breaking through barriers and entering the West. What did we do there? We took over their warehouses, stealing what needed to be stolen, taking what needed to be taken, copying what needed to be copied, deceiving where necessary, selling what needed to be sold, buying what needed to be bought, taking advantage of low human rights. It took 40 years. The Chinese became wealthy, generally speaking. What is this situation? This is the relationship between the West and Babylon. It's so real. Everyone, but today I want to discuss a principle that might be quite profound. When the West opened its doors to China or opened the Eastern Gate, what happened? In fact, this also included a very harsh reality for the Chinese people. Because over the past 40 years, it has been precisely the 40 years of intense de-Christianization or secularization in the West. After the door opened, from Deng Xiaoping to Xi Jinping, generations of Chinese people have all rushed in. They didn't see anything. What they saw was the treasury of the temple. We need to learn this. This kind of short-sighted westernization model, it started as early as the time of Liang Qiqiao, or even during the self-strengthening movement. We want the Westerners' strong ships and powerful cannons, and the wealth is the treasury. We want all the good things inside the treasury. But starting from that time, especially in the past 40 years, the most important thing we completely don't want, which is the purpose of consulting the temple. There is a particularly important verse in 1 Chronicles 26. So the reason for storing away weapons and letting horses rest in the southern mountains, and the gold and silver treasures brought over like travelers, all entering the treasury of the Lord, has only one purpose. What is it? It is to build the temple of the Lord. This issue, everyone, presents a question anew for our era, for Americans and Chinese, and for people all over the world. What exactly are you accumulating wealth for? If you don't use it to build the temple of the Lord, your wealth will vanish overnight. It's the same today. Have you noticed? Setting aside the US-China trade war, the stock markets in the East and in America are evaporating every day. What does this evaporation mean? It means your wealth is disappearing into thin air. For Chinese people, we have learned or stolen all the good things from the harshness of the West, but we never understand the true purpose of God, establishing a storehouse. For 40 years, Chinese people have accumulated a lot of wealth, but not a single project or expenditure has been for the purpose of building God's temple. When we talk about seeing God's temple, it doesn't just refer to the temple in Jerusalem. Not exactly, not entirely. Let's use another term to make it clearer. It means undertaking public projects that align with public welfare and goodness. This makes it a bit clearer, right? Okay, this includes us as individuals, individual families, the wealthy in China, these nouveaux riches, all the cities, Shanghai, Beijing. First tier, cities, Shenzhen, Guangzhou. State-owned enterprises, private enterprises. Have you set aside any of your accumulated wealth to support public welfare in good causes? No, you haven't. What a sad and shameful 40 years. But we must remember, there is a time for everything. There is also a time to discard your warehouse. If you don't use everything God has given you to build God's work, God will surely leave you with nothing. These 40 years bear witness to this truth, to this harsh truth. Not only that, you go to the West and learn everything about chips, high technology, capital, stocks, markets, right? But you don't. Pursue legitimate business. Don't just save electricity. Not only should you not save electricity, on one hand, you steal the good things from the temple's warehouse, and on the other hand, you specifically persecute God's teachings. Can God's court tolerate you? Similarly, let's talk about the West and about Trump. Now Trump caters to the most primal desires and instinctual needs of Americans, which is to have money. Yes, we have seen that the Trump administration has done a really good job in one area. Prices are going down. At least oil prices are dropping. And it seems like the price of eggs has also come down. This is a good thing. But just this is not enough. What does that mean? Even if Trump's new policies succeed and Americans have money, manufacturing has returned. What are you doing? There is completely no intention in this regard, no teaching in this area, no vision for it, because there are no priests, no prophets, no gatekeepers. If Americans accumulate wealth again, it still does not mean the rebuilding of Christianity. Rebuild the church. Even more evil Easterners will rise. Take away all of America's warehouses. So Hezekiah's dealings with the king of Babylon, centered around warehouses, have extremely profound revelations for both the East and the West for our entire generation. On a smaller scale, what are we accumulating wealth for in our lifetime? To put it another way, why does God give you money? Putting it this way might be simpler. This is the fact. It's not just about what you accumulate, but why God gives you money. On a larger scale, globally, the rise and fall are all in God's hands. That is to say, those who obey me will prosper. Those who oppose me will be cursed. I hope someone can pass a message to Trump. You painstakingly accumulate wealth for Americans, but let them forget God.